There is a promise that this country made to you, not a political promise, not the kind that gets walked back after an election or buried in a budget negotiation nobody paid attention to. A fundamental structural promise that is held for more than 80 years. You go to work, you contribute a portion of every single paycheck over the course of your working life. And when you get older, when your working years are behind you, you get that money back. You retire with dignity. You cover your bills. You do not have to choose between your medication and your groceries. That is the promise. That is what Social Security has always been. And right now, that promise is under the most serious threat it has faced in a generation. I want to be completely direct with you, because this is not a conversation that benefits from political softening. If you are one of the nearly 70 million Americans currently receiving Social Security, this affects your check, your access to services, and your ability to get help when something goes wrong. If you are still working and paying into the program, this affects what will be there when your time comes. And if you have children or grandchildren who will one day depend on this system, this affects them too, in ways that will be very difficult to undo if we are not paying attention right now. So let's talk about all of it. What Social Security actually is, what is being done to it, why it matters far more broadly than most people realize, and what needs to happen to protect and strengthen it for every generation that comes after us. Let me start with something that surprises a lot of people, especially younger Americans who think of Social Security primarily as a retirement program. Social Security is not just a retirement program. It is one of the most comprehensive insurance systems ever built for working people, and it covers situations that can happen to anyone at any age. Think about a 40-year-old worker with a family, a mortgage, kids in school. They get into a serious car accident and end up with a disability that prevents them from returning to work. Social Security disability benefits are there for that person. Or consider the worst scenario: that same 40-year-old does not survive. Their children are suddenly left without a parent and without that income. Social Security survivor benefits help those kids. They help that family continue covering rent and groceries and the basic costs of staying afloat while they navigate the worst thing that has ever happened to them. This is why framing Social Security as something only relevant to older Americans is so misleading and so dangerous. When you pay into Social Security, you are not just saving for your own retirement. You are contributing to a system that protects you and your entire family against disability, against the early loss of a breadwinner, against the financial devastation that follows sudden and unexpected circumstances. Every working American has a stake in this system right now, today, regardless of how far away retirement might feel. Over 80 years, Social Security has delivered on this promise without fail, every single month. In 2024 alone, Social Security lifted nearly 29 million people out of poverty. That number deserves a moment. 29 million people in a single year who would have fallen below the poverty line without the benefits they earned through a lifetime of work. This program is not abstract. It is the difference between dignity and desperation for tens of millions of Americans, and it has been for generations. So what is happening to it right now, and why does it demand our urgent attention? The Trump administration has taken a wrecking ball to the Social Security Administration in ways that are not always visible from the outside, but are being felt acutely by the people who depend on the system every day. Staffing has been slashed. Services have been cut. The infrastructure that allows people to actually access their benefits, to get questions answered, to resolve problems with their payments, has been systematically dismantled. Here is what that looks like in practical terms. Americans who need to reach someone at Social Security are now waiting hours on the phone just to get through to a representative. People who need an in-person appointment are being told to wait months, not days. Months. For people dealing with a problem with their benefits, who are not receiving the check they are supposed to receive, waiting months is not an inconvenience. It is a crisis. When a senior or a person with a disability goes a month without their Social Security check, we are not talking about a temporary budget tightening. We are talking about whether they can pay rent, whether they can keep the lights on, whether they can afford the medications they need to stay healthy. For the 1 in 4 Americans for whom Social Security is their only source of income, a delayed payment is not a minor administrative issue. It is a catastrophic disruption to every aspect of their daily life. And this is the part I need you to understand clearly, because it is not accidental. when you deliberately cut the staff responsible for processing claims and answering questions, when you force people who are trying to get help to wait so long that some of them simply give up, you are effectively cutting benefits without ever touching the official benefit amount. It is a backdoor cut. It achieves the same outcome as a direct reduction while allowing the people responsible to point at the numbers on paper and claim they never reduced anyone's benefits. The damage is real. The method is just harder to see. The frontline workers at the Social Security Administration are union workers who came to this job because they wanted to help people. They are now being forced to manage unsustainable workloads, assigned tasks they were never trained to perform, and left to absorb the frustration of the Americans they are trying to serve while the resources they need get stripped away one budget cut at a time. And the damage already done is not where this stops. Frank Bisignano, the Trump administration's head of Social Security, has floated raising the retirement age. Let's be honest about what that actually means. Raising the retirement age is a benefit cut, full stop. It means Americans who have spent decades paying into this system would have to wait longer to access what they earned. And the people who feel that most brutally are the ones who work physically demanding jobs, whose bodies cannot sustain manual labor into their late 60s, who would face an impossible choice between working past the point their health allows or retiring before benefits are available and watching their savings disappear in the gap. The administration also came very close to announcing a rule that would have made it significantly harder for disabled Americans to qualify for Social Security disability benefits. Sustained pushback forced them to step back from that specific move. But the fact that it got as far as it did tells you exactly what direction this administration wants to take the program. Here is what I believe is actually happening underneath all of these individual actions. The strategy is to deliberately manufacture chaos, cut the staff, slow the services, make the system harder to navigate, generate frustration and dysfunction at scale, and then point to that dysfunction as evidence that the program is broken and needs to be fundamentally restructured, privatized, handed off to private interests who have no obligation to honor the promise that working Americans spent their careers earning. This is not a theory, it is a pattern, and it ends with something that was built to serve working people being dismantled in their name. Americans do not want that. We cannot allow manufactured chaos to be used as justification for destroying something that has worked for 80 years. But protecting Social Security cannot only mean playing defense. Because even before the current attacks began, Social Security had a problem that was quietly making life harder for the people who depend on it most. And that problem needs to be addressed honestly. Social Security benefits have not kept pace with the actual cost of living for the people who rely on them. Every year, benefits are adjusted for inflation through the cost of living adjustment. On the surface, that sounds like the system is keeping up. But the inflation measure used does not accurately reflect how seniors and people with disabilities actually spend their money. It does not adequately account for rising healthcare costs, which hit seniors harder than almost any other group. It does not account for home care, assisted living, the specific real expenses that make up the actual lives of the people the adjustment is supposed to help. The result is a gap that has been growing for 15 years. Over that period, Social Security benefits have lost 20% of their purchasing power. 20%. A senior who received $100 in benefits 15 years ago has the equivalent of $80 in real buying power today. They are receiving a number that looks similar but purchasing meaningfully less. And the people who feel that gap most acutely are the ones who cannot compensate with savings or part-time work or family support, because they simply do not have those options. The cost of living adjustment for 2026 has been announced at approximately 2.8%. For the average recipient, that is roughly $56 additional per month. At a moment when grocery prices, housing costs, and healthcare expenses have been climbing consistently, $56 a month is not relief. It is the appearance of relief. It does not cover a week of groceries for most people. It does not make a dent in a medical bill. And for the 1 in 4 Americans for whom Social Security is their entire income, it genuinely is not enough to close the gap between what the program currently provides and what a dignified life actually costs. This is why the conversation about Social Security cannot stop at protection. It has to include expansion, a serious, honest commitment to making the program strong enough to actually do what it was designed to do. There is a bill I am fighting for right now that would increase Social Security benefits by $200 per month immediately. Not eventually, not after a phase-in period that takes years to reach the people who need it now. Right now. For seniors watching the cost of everything rise while their fixed income stands still, $200 a month is the difference between managing and not managing. For veterans and people with disabilities living on these benefits, it is a meaningful and immediate improvement in the quality of daily life. The question that always follows is, how do we pay for it? And the answer is straightforward once you understand the current structure. Right now, a CEO earning $20 million a year pays approximately the same amount into Social Security as someone earning $176,000 a year. Above that income threshold, contributions stop entirely. The executive making $20 million pays into the system on only a fraction of their income, while a working American pays on every dollar they earn. That is not a fair system. Changing it, asking the highest earners to contribute on more of their income the way working Americans already do on all of theirs, would generate the revenue needed to expand benefits and secure the program for future generations. Making the rules fairer for working people also makes the finances of the program healthier for everyone who will ever depend on it. That is not a complicated trade-off. It is the right thing to do. The forces working to weaken Social Security are persistent, well-funded, and strategic. They understand that the goal cannot be achieved in a single dramatic move, so they work incrementally. A staffing cut here, a rule change there, a retirement age proposal floated to test the reaction, a benefit restriction pushed until the pushback forces a retreat, then quietly reintroduced later in a different form. The only thing that has ever successfully countered that kind of pressure is persistent engagement from the people who have the most at stake. 70 million Americans are currently receiving Social Security benefits. Millions more are paying in right now and counting on it being there when they need it. That is not a small or powerless group. That is an enormous portion of this country with every reason and every right to demand that the promise made to them be honored, protected, and strengthened. I am not giving up on this fight, and I need you in it with me, because Social Security does not belong to any administration or any political party. It belongs to the American workers who built it, who paid into it paycheck after paycheck over a lifetime of hard work, and who have every right to expect that when the time finally comes, it will be there for them exactly as promised. A staffing cut here, a rule change there, a retirement age proposal floated to test the reaction, a benefit restriction pushed until the pushback forces a retreat, then quietly reintroduced later in a different form. The only thing that has ever successfully countered that kind of pressure is persistent engagement from the people who have the most at stake. 70 million Americans are currently receiving Social Security benefits. Millions more are paying in right now and counting on it being there when they need it. That is not a small or powerless group. That is an enormous portion of this country with every reason and every right to demand that the promise made to them be honored, protected, and strengthened. I am not giving up on this fight, and I need you in it with me, because Social Security does not belong to any administration or any political party. It belongs to the American workers who built it, who paid into it paycheck after paycheck over a lifetime of hard work, and who have every right to expect that when the time finally comes, it will be there for them exactly as promised.